Okay. Good morning, madam. Thank you very much that you welcome us to come to have interview with you today.
Yeah, good morning and thank you.
Yeah. Madam, we want to know your impression after you carrying out your duty here in Indonesia. What do you think about your duty here?
In March, it will be 5 years since I came to Indonesia, and I'm not being diplomatic right now. Indonesia for me was a love at first sight. It's absolutely true. I spent more than 30 years now in Southeast Asia, but Indonesia, of course, is an absolutely unique country with the wonderful people, very beautiful nature, and great potential. So I'm very happy that I was sent to Indonesia. And I would love to stay more, but unfortunately, there are limits to how long the ambassador can stay. So probably this year I will be going back to Moscow.
Okay. Do you have special duty here in Indonesia that give to you?
Of course, the duty of every ambassador is to promote bilateral relations in every area, beginning from political dialogue to economic, cultural, and tourist, humanitarian context. So my job here is to do whatever I can with the help of my staff at the embassy to develop bilateral relations.
Between Indonesia and Russia, we have already very long relation. Until now, what do you think the position about the Russian and the Indonesian position right now?
You're absolutely right. We have established our diplomatic relations on the 3rd of February 1950, so it makes 73 years already of our diplomatic relations. But of course, we had relations even before that. There are many very interesting stories that I could tell you if we have enough time about our bilateral relations going back into history. For instance, we have a grave of a Russian Navy officer in Aceh, in Pulau Kota Sabang, and he was buried there in 1901. So you see,
1901,
yes, it dates a long time. But of course, our bilateral relations are developing in a very good way, in a very positive way, and it is based on the traditions of friendship that have been established during President Sukarno when he visited our country 4 times, actually. For the last 20 years, our relations have been on the rise, and even despite the complicated geopolitical situation, we see very positive trends. For instance, you know, the President of the Republic of Indonesia, Pak Joko Widodo, visited our country in June last year and had a very good conversation with our president that lasted more than 2 hours. They also spoke on the phone 3 times, if I'm not mistaken.
3 times, yeah.
Our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov, visited Indonesia 2 times last year in the framework of Indonesia presidency in G20. And they met with Ibu Retno Marsudi several times outside Indonesia during the framework of different international fora and meetings. Our Speaker of the Parliament, Ms. Valentina Matviyenko, also visited Indonesia for the P20, but she also had bilateral meetings with the leaders of the Parliament of Indonesia. So we enjoy an active political dialogue. Our trade turnover has increased by 50% last year. We are implementing some joint investment projects. Not enough, of course, we can do much more, but still we do have these projects, mostly in oil and gas area. We've seen an increase of the tourist arrivals from Russia. Last year we've seen 50,000 Russian tourists coming to Bali. Of course, it's 3 times less than it was before COVID, but still the numbers are growing. And we have around 800 Indonesian students who are studying in Russia, because Russian government provides scholarships. This year we've increased the number of scholarships for Indonesian students. It's 300 scholarships, but we see a very big demand. Last year we've seen 11,000 requests for scholarships.
11,000.
11,000. So of course our government is ready to increase even more the number of scholarships.
Up to 11? Up to 11,000?
Well, not immediately, but gradually, step by step, we are increasing the number of scholarships. So you see, our relations are developing in a very positive way. And we in Russia, we see Indonesia as our key partner and friend in this region. We see the role of Indonesia that global-wise is growing, and that we witnessed it during the presidency of Indonesia in G20. Now Indonesia is the chair of ASEAN, and we have relations of strategic partnership with ASEAN. So Indonesia is a very important partner for us, and we hope that our future cooperation will be increased.
In the future, what is the potential cooperation that you think is very important for both countries?
Of course, political dialogue and political interaction are very important, and they are based on similarity of views and values that we have between our two countries, similarity of views on what is happening in the world. But of course, every political relation is usually based on a solid foundation of economic relations. Though our trade is growing, of course, it's not enough if we compare to the potential that the two countries have. So we, of course, need to increase and diversify our trade and economic cooperation. And there are areas that I see are very promising. First of all, it's energy. Including nuclear energy. When and if your government is ready, we can assist you, because we have the experience, we have the technologies. Right now we have more than 10 investment projects in the area of nuclear energy with foreign partners. And we hope that Indonesia can also enjoy and profit from our technologies, our experience and expertise. Of course, IT also, and we do enjoy cooperation in this area. There are Russian companies that are here in Indonesia and are interacting with their partners. Commercial aircraft building, shipbuilding, pharmaceuticals. You know that we have a very developed industry. We've produced anti-COVID vaccines, other kinds of medications. So also it is quite a promising area. I didn't mention that in December last year we started the negotiation process for a free trade agreement between the Eurasian Economic Union, and as you know, Russia is part of the Eurasian Economic Union, together with Belarus, Armenia, Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. So we are working on a free trade agreement. We hope that this negotiation process will be completed in 2 years' time, and then of course it will boost trade and economic cooperation between our two countries. So there is a lot that we can do together, despite all the difficulties in global economy. And of course, I'm sure that will benefit both the people of Russia and Indonesia.
In the years of 2000, we have a experience in barter trade between Russia and Indonesia. Russia have the aircraft and we have the agriculture products. I don't know if we can, what do you think about that? We can experience like that also in the next future?
Well, you know, whatever is suitable for the two countries can be considered, because barter has been, you know, considered a little bit archaic, you know, old-fashioned with all the new instruments. But because of this new situation, of course, I think this kind of models also could be considered if it suits both sides. Why not?
About the investor of Russia, do they have any interest also in the IKN, the state capital in Kalimantan that built by our government right now?
I know for sure that this issue has been discussed between our two presidents in June, and Indonesia has invited partners from Russia to be part of the project for the transfer of the new capital. I know there is interest from Russia, for instance, government of Moscow, that can share some of the technologies of smart cities technologies that we have in Moscow, because Moscow now is one of the most comfortable cities in Europe. We have a very well developed public transportation system. Though it's has been first started, you know, the underground in the 30s. So, but it's developing and it's being modernized. You know, every year I come to Moscow for holiday, I see new metro. We call it metro stations, and you can now reach any point of any district of Moscow through the underground. The bus, now we are switching to electrical buses. In Moscow you can see electrical buses. So I think that is a very good area of cooperation. Of course, we also have experience in railway building, so the new capital will, I'm sure, will need railways.
Yes, of course.
Energy, of course, to supply electricity to the new capital. So we see interest from our businesses and from our government agencies.
Madam, our President Joko Widodo already come to your countries. Do you think that your President Vladimir Putin will come also to Indonesia?
I cannot confirm right now, but we do hope.
We very hope.
Yeah, we do hope that he can come, because in September this year there will be ASEAN-related summits, like the East Asian Summit. So we also hope that he will be able to come, but a lot will depend on the geopolitical situation, of course.
Okay. Yeah. In the last years, there's a summit in. Oh, I think there's a summit meeting in Bali.
G20.
In the G20. What do you think about the Indonesian neutrality in that moment that you face?
We appreciate very much the position of Indonesian government and the stand of Indonesia as the G20 presidency. To a great extent, because of the efforts of Indonesia, Russia has participated in all the meetings. You know, there was a big pressure from especially G7 countries to exclude Russia from this format, and to shift the attention of G20 from relevant global economic and financial issues to political confrontation, I would say. So because of the efforts of Indonesian presidency, it didn't happen. And our president has sent a congratulatory message to President Joko Widodo, expressing our gratitude and appreciation for this very balanced and constructive position of Indonesia. Moreover, we said it many times that probably another country wouldn't be able to reach such a good result, especially when we refer to the G20 declaration that has been issued. Despite all the differences, of course, Russia also has shown flexibility on the language of the declaration, especially on the wording on Ukrainian crisis. And as you know, this language was so good that it has been adopted also by the APEC declaration in Bangkok. So we really congratulate Indonesia on the big success of its presidency in G20, and Indonesia has really shown its potential and its capability as a global player.
So, just today, Indonesia become the chairman of the ASEAN. What do you think about that? Do you have any expectation from Indonesia regarding the ASEAN?
We wish Indonesia the same success as the ASEAN chair. And of course, we expect that Indonesia will have the same balanced position. Because Russia is participating in many activities and many meetings, ASEAN-related meetings. For instance, right now there is a SOM ADMM meeting, the senior official meetings of the ASEAN and dialogue partners, defense ministers. We have a delegation from Moscow that is participating in this meeting. We expect our Minister of Defense to attend the ADMM. And of course, we are waiting for our Minister of Foreign Affairs also to attend the IRF meeting, for instance, and ES meetings. So we are sure that Indonesia will have the same balanced position on the participation of Russia and will achieve great success.
Thank you. Madam, would you please explain again the reason for Russia to carry out military operation in Ukraine?
Yes, of course. It's hard actually to explain it in just a couple of words, but because, of course, the roots of this crisis, this crisis didn't happen just 1 year ago. It's already quite a long story. When the Western propaganda says that the so-called Russian attack on Ukraine was unprovoked, it's a total lie. Because for many years we've been trying to solve this issue by peaceful and diplomatic means. Our president has said that Russia never starts wars, Russia stops wars. So what we're trying to do now is to put an end to the war that has been going on since 2014. And may I remind you that in 2014, a very Ruso-phobic government came to power in Ukraine, and it was supported. It was a coup d'etat. It was absolutely illegal, but it was supported by the Western countries. Basically, the West has brought this Ruso-phobic and Neo-Nazi forces to power in Kiev. Which is an absolutely double standard and hypocrisy, because the Nazi ideology is banned all over the world after World War II. But still they do support this Ruso-phobic and Nazi forces in Ukraine. And after coming to power, these forces, this government, President Poroshenko, they immediately started a very Ruso-phobic policy inside Ukraine. They started to tried to ban Russian language and Russian culture, and it's like banning Javanese language in Java or Balinese language in Bali. How can you do that? It's impossible, because all Ukrainians can speak Russian, and 50% of Ukrainians thinks of themselves as Russian national, as Russian
culture,
ethnically Russians. They are Ukrainian nationals, but they are ethnically Russian. And 3 regions who are predominantly Russian, it's Crimea, 90% population Russia, Lugansk-Donetz, 19% population Russia. They protested. They didn't want to accept this kind of policies. And instead of trying to settle the situation in a peaceful way by dialogue, the government in Kiev sent troops to Lugansk and Donetsk, and they were prepared to send troops to Crimea. Crimea, they voted in favor of coming back to Russia, and we accepted them. We protected them. Lugansk and Donetsk didn't see any other way out but to proclaim their own independence from Kiev. At that time, we didn't accept them, we didn't acknowledge it, we didn't accept them as part of Russia, but they wanted to become part of Russia. Instead, we tried to solve this issue by pushing the leadership of Lugansk and Donetsk and Kiev to sit together and to find a solution. It was also endorsed by the European countries. And in 2015, the Minsk agreements were signed, and these Minsk agreements provided a very clear roadmap to solve this issue inside Ukraine. And these agreements were endorsed by the Security Council of the UN. They adopted the resolution 2022, so this became part of international law. According to these agreements, Kiev should have adopted a law on special autonomous status for Lugansk and Donetsk. Inside Ukraine, territorial integrity of Ukraine preserved. Lugansk, Donetsk, part of Ukraine, special autonomous status, allowing people, Russian people in Lugansk and Donetsk, to speak their own language, to have Russian schools, to develop Russian culture. Did it happen? No, it never happened. And now we hear statements from Western leaders, for instance, Angela Merkel, the former chancellor. She clearly said that the West and Kiev, they didn't have any intention to commit to these agreements. Basically, they lied to Russia, to Lugansk and Donetsk, to international community. They only wanted these agreements to gain time and arm Ukraine. And meanwhile, in these 8 years or 7 years, 8 years now, beginning from 2015, they were turning Ukraine into a military instrument to attack Russia. And they actually succeeded more or less. So for 8 years, we've been trying to push Kiev to fulfill the Minsk agreements and to push the Western sponsors of Kiev to make Kiev fulfill the agreements. It never happens. Instead, they sent troops. They bombed Lugansk and Donetsk. They killed 14,000 people there, including old people, women, children. They were destroying the civil infrastructure there. 8 years. How could we ignore that? And also, it was clear that by February 2022, Kiev was preparing a massive attack on Lugansk and Donetsk and Crimea, which at that time was already
in Russia.
Part of Russia. So, in this situation, Russian government and the president acknowledged the independence of Lugansk and Donetsk. We signed a treaty with them providing for assistance, including defense assistance. And these two republics asked for defense assistance from Russia. That was the legal foundation of our operation in Ukraine. And we started this military operation not to destroy Ukraine, not to hurt Ukrainian people that we see as our brothers and sisters, but to protect people of Lugansk and Donetsk and our own country. Because it was clear that there was a massive attack prepared on our country, Lugansk, Donetsk, and Russia. So this is the root of the conflict. But so Ukraine is being used by the West as an anti-Russian instrument, as a mean to weaken or even destroy Russia. Of course, they are scared of direct confrontation with nuclear power, so they are using Ukraine. And for Ukraine, it's a tragedy, of course. For Ukrainian people, that their own government and their own president, they sold or betrayed the interest of their own people.
That's true.
And to protect, actually, and to serve the interest of the West.
Yes, it's true.
And that's a tragedy. For if you go to Russia, you will see that there is no hatred against Ukraine. We don't have any propaganda or whatever trying to instigate hatred. We have in Moscow, we have Ukrainian restaurants. They are working, they're open. You will not find that in Ukraine. So, but even the deeper cause of this conflict, it's even deeper because, of course, now you will ask me, why does the West want to weaken and destroy Russia?
Yeah. Why?
Why?
What do you think about that?
It's very clear. If we had any illusion before the Ukrainian crisis started, now we have a full understanding of what are the intentions and the plans of the West. They don't want Russia to be strong and independent. Why? Because we doubt the dominance of the West. Now we see in the world two geopolitical models. One is promoted by the United States and its allies, and to say it in simple words, the Americans say, we are the best, we're the strongest, we're the most democratic. You agree, you will be okay. You don't agree, what we say you have to do, we will come and destroy you, military or economically. And that happened already. We see that happen. In Yugoslavia, in Libya, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, of course. In Iraq, around 1 million civilians died because of the attack of the Americans. And they call it collateral damage.
Collateral damage, yeah.
Very cynical.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Russia, we propose another geopolitical model. It's a multipolar world. Everyone is equal, everyone has the right to develop, everyone has the right to protect its own interest. And no one has the right to tell other countries what to do. Well, with the exception of the Security Council of the United Nations, where the decisions are taken by a majority, or even in the among the permanent members by consensus. But the problem is that the West, and by West I mean, of course, United States and its allies, they are not prepared to exist in this paradigm, in this model, because for centuries they've based their prosperity on their dominance
And
exploitation of other countries. During the colonial era, well, in Indonesia, you know that perfectly. So even after the end of the colonial era, the West, we see that very clearly, have pursued their neo-colonial policies. In 1991, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, we had the illusion that the West will treat us, Russia, as their equals. but it never happened. They were just destroying actually our economy and trying to pump out our natural resources. These are neo-colonial policies. And they accept, and they stated openly that the prosperity of the European Union countries, for instance, was to a big extent based on cheap energy resources from Russia and cheap labor in China.
Openly.
Openly.
Yeah.
They're saying it openly. Now it's the end. And they are ending this.
Yeah.
So what we are seeing now, it's a very painful transition from a unipolar world dominated by the West to a multipolar world where there are new economic powers emerging. It's not what we just wanted, you know. We just wanted. It's an objective process. It's happening. We see that happening. We see that China is growing, and China also are always bad guys in the eyes of the West. Why? Because they're getting stronger.
Yes.
They're winning the competition. India, ASEAN, African countries, Latin American countries. And with this economic growth comes also political influence, of course. So the world cannot remain the same. It is changing. And that's why this is we see this crisis happening. Because the West is gripping to its dominance. They are not prepared to let it go. They are not prepared to surrender and not surrender. We don't want them, you know, we want to be equal.
Yes.
But they don't want it. So that is the deep cause of the Ukrainian crisis. It's not about Ukraine. Ukraine is just a victim, and it's not a victim of a Russian aggression. It's the victim of the neo-colonial policies of the West. And we sympathize very much with the Ukrainian people.
Madam, one question again. Can you tell us about what really Russia actually want in the futures of the world?
As I told you, of course, you know, it's very also difficult to picture how the world will be. But basically, we are struggling for a more just international system of international relations. You know, when the United States and their allies are talking about the rules-based world order, we cannot accept that. Because, of course, why actually they're doing it? Because they're losing the competition in the past set of, in the existing set of norms and rules. They are losing competition with China. They're losing competition with Russia. And that's why they want some new set of rules that would help them continue their dominance. But who will be writing these rules? That's the big question. It will not be Russia, it will not be China, it will not be India, it will not be Indonesia. It will be they. So why do we have to accept these rules? Which will not be fair, we are sure about that. We see what is happening. They're using many agendas which look very good in, you know, in words, beautiful words.
The sweet words.
Sweet words, human rights.
That's
Of course, who can deny that human rights are very important? But they're using it as an instrument to interfere in the domestic affairs. And also, how can you have just a gold standard of democracy or human rights? All countries have their own history, traditions, culture. How can you promote LGBT agenda in, say, Muslim countries? Impossible. It will not be accepted, and they are doing it very aggressively. Remember in Qatar, when there was the football championship?
That's right.
They were just pushing Qatar to accept that, which is very much against the traditions, even the laws of this country. In Russia, we are a traditional society, we don't accept that. Okay, green agenda. of course,
Very environmentalist.
we need to conserve the environment. We need to protect the environment. But again, it shouldn't be used as an instrument to blackmail other countries, to interfere into domestic affairs of other countries. How can the United States or European impose their own laws and rules on other countries, like with all the issues on palm oil?
Yeah, palm oil. Yeah.
Palm oil, you know that.
Yeah.
So they're trying to use everything, to dominate, to blackmail, to push, to make other countries do what they tell, actually. And we can see that the majority of the world, of the countries, they don't like it. Of course, the West is still very strong, and they are, or they believe, they make believe that they're strong. And some of the countries just don't dare to say anything against, because they will be blackmailed, they will be attacked military, as we've seen in Iraq. Or Libya was not the most most democratic in the Western way country, but it was a prosperous country. People were not dying. People were enjoying good social welfare system, education. Now look at Libya; it has been destroyed. There is a civil war going on. People are being killed. So the West is gripping to its dominance. We would like to see our world a more just. We are not, it's not that Russia is seeking any dominance. The Western propaganda says that it's just Putin wants to restore the Russian Empire to get more territories. It's absolutely absurd. We are the biggest country in the world. We don't need any more territories. We have enough. Come to Siberia, you will see how many territories we have. We are not seeking to be, to dominate instead of, say, the United States. No, we are just seeking a world that is fair, where our interest would be taken into account. Not only our interest, but interest of our country. We are open for dialogue and cooperation, but on the equal basis, not just someone telling us what to do.
Yeah. One more, Madam. Why there is Russia or even China can resist against them, the West, and the other cannot resist? What is the main and strategic point that Russia can resist against them?
Well, first of all, I think we were driven to this point that we couldn't accept it anymore. Because what was happening in 2021, if you remember, just before the operation, Zelensky declared that Ukraine will become a member of NATO. And for us, it was absolutely unacceptable, because after, when just before the collapse of the Soviet Union, Gorbachev made a deal with NATO that we allow Germany to reunificate. You remember, after World War II, Germany was divided into two.
West and East.
And in the Eastern Germany, we had our troops. So there was a deal made that we withdraw troops from Eastern Germany. Germany reunificates. NATO doesn't expand, doesn't go closer to our borders.
Russia,
We did that. We withdrew the troops. You know that Germany reunificated, but they lied to us. NATO was still expanding to our borders. 5 rounds of expansion. Including Baltic states, which are neighbors. But what was really unacceptable, Ukraine, because we have 2,000 kilometers border with Ukraine.
2,000.
If the NATO infrastructure, military infrastructure, comes to our border, 2 minutes, missile reach Moscow. Impossible. We were telling them that it's unacceptable for us. We cannot agree to that. We even drafted an agreement with NATO to ensure our security interests, and we gave it to them. They ignore it. They ignore it just. So we were driven to this point that we couldn't have ensured our security,
sovereignty,
and sovereignty without this operation. Of course, we became stronger. Without the necessary defense infrastructure, economic resilience, we couldn't have done it. China, they are, there are different estimates, but China is becoming economy number 1 in the world. So they have the economic potential. We have also the defense potential.
That's true.
And we are a nuclear power, comparable to the United States. I can tell you, if we didn't have our nuclear forces, we would have shared the fate of Yugoslavia a long time ago. And we understand that if it was, the situation would have been developing in the way the West would like to do it, we would have lost our sovereignty. First, economic sovereignty,
yes,
and then even state sovereignty. Look what they are saying now. That they want to see Russia divided. They don't want to see Russia as a big state. They want to see many states like Yugoslavia divided. How can we accept that? Of course not. It's a matter of our survival as a nation and as a state. And we have the means and the potential, of course. Look, we are already in the book of records of Guinness on the number of sanctions that has been imposed on us. 14,000 sanctions. And they thought that our economy would be in shreds, like Obama said. It never happened. Okay, I'm not saying that it's a perfect situation. Of course, it presents difficulties for us, but our economy has adapted. Last year, it contracted by around 2%, but it's not 30%, it's not 50% like they expected. And this year, we've seen growth already. Even the MIF agreed that there would be around 1 or 2% growth, which I think it's just wonderful in this geopolitical situation. So, of course, we need time. We were very much interrelated with Europe, less so with the United States. Now we are, of course, our businesses, our economy is looking to Asia, including ASEAN and Indonesia, and we are seeing this interest. We see, we have already, since the beginning of the year, several business delegations coming to Indonesia. So we are not isolated, that's not true. Because the majority of the countries are ready to cooperate with us, despite all the difficulties. Our trade with China has doubled, our trade with India has also grown very considerably, as I told you, with Indonesia, 50% of growth. So our economy will adapt, and I have no doubts that we will win, but not only military. That is, there's no doubts about it, whatever the Western propaganda says. Military, we will win. But I hope that we will also win in a broader sense, in sense of values that we're promoting.
The new values.
The new values of a more just and fair equal system of international relations.
Okay, Madam. Do you have the closing statement to our Indonesians, so we can get the heart of the Russia?
Indonesian people were always our good friends. since the times of President Sukarno.
Before the independent era.
Even before the
Yes.
independence, but especially in the 60s when Indonesia, everyone knew Rayon Pulau Kelapa, everyone knew about President Sukarno, and I'm sure that our relations will grow even stronger and even better, because Indonesia is a great country, Russia is a great country, and we can do a lot together.
Okay, madam. Thank you very much for your time, and we hope that we will be together for a long, long time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Terima kasih.
Yeah.
Спасибо.
Yeah, спасибо. Yeah.